Hey you! Yes, you there. Someone told me that you're going around telling people that heavy disguises are bad. But heavy disguises aren't bad at all, you're just not using them right. So allow me to explain to you in this video the whys, wheres and whens to effectively utilising the heavy disguise to the best of its ability in-game. Now with that being said, would you please consider subscribing if you'd like to see like-minded content in the future? And let's finally start this video off by talking about the whys. So, the whys. Why should you be disguising as the heavy weapons guy? What are the strengths of the disguise and how should you be using them? Well, you see, heavy disguises have two things going for them. The first strength that the heavy disguise has going for it is the fact that no one would ever think you would disguise as a heavy under any scenario. This might sound trivial, but this is the biggest boon the disguise has going for it. You see, as a spy, you don't really want to be caught, because if you are caught, well, you die. That is the point of the spy as a whole, you are not supposed to be caught. And therefore the best way to do that is to blend in with your surroundings. And if you can pick a disguise that no one would ever bother to spy check just because they'd naturally assume you would never disguise as them, well, that makes for a pretty strong disguise in my opinion. You just simply do not get spy checked whilst using the heavy disguise as much as you do with any others. Players just simply do not think you would ever disguise as a heavy because of the speed penalty. The speed penalty is trivial compared to what you can pull off with the heavy disguise. You blend in like a 45-year-old woman in a bar, no one is ever going to see you or approach you. The amount of times that people have just forgotten that Spy can disguise as a heavy and just would not believe he ever would in the slightest if they did remember, that I've personally encountered in game, are probably in the hundreds. I went entire matches uncounted and unspy checked just because people kept dying to the Spy, but just would never ever assume he would disguise as the heavy. It's magnificent and you should definitely give it a go. The other reason you might want to be disguising as a heavy is to bait medics into stabs. You see, medics naturally let their guard down around good power classes because they feel safe, and then you're simply just one good move away from winning the game. There are some other reasons for why you might want to disguise as a heavy. Some people seem to think disguising as a friendly heavy is a good idea and crouching in the corner and then preying on unsuspecting victims, but I don't agree with this personally. It feels a bit like cheating and dishonesty, which actually might be the premises of Spy as a whole. But picking a disguise where people naturally let their guard down around you, and both just don't spy check to begin with, is an insanely strong tool to have in your pocket, and one that is very easily abusable just because people don't change their ways when it comes to TF2. Part 2. Where, and by where I specifically mean maps. We have to talk about maps when it comes to heavy disguises, because our greatly lowered walking speed drastically affects our positioning. So the ideal map for a heavy disguise is one that is either generally much smaller than most maps, or ones with lots of different escape options and flank routes. Smaller maps are important for a heavy disguise because, as I mentioned earlier, we have a much harder time getting from point A to point B whilst disguised. Now when I say point A to point B, I'm not necessarily referring to the distance between the spawn room and the objective, because when traversing terrain you can just drop your disguise if there's no one around. What I'm really referring to when I say point A to point B is the distance between you and your next victim. Since you will be moving at the speed of the slowest class in the game, everyone else except for other heavies is going to be faster than you, and therefore they're going to be moving away from you faster than you are going to be moving towards them. But a smaller map massively helps in limiting this, as this means the enemy has less places to go overall. In short, the less distance they have to run away from you, the more effective you are. Now for the other half of the coin, escape routes. As you see, when you are moving as slow as the slowest class in the game, it is much harder to outmaneuver your enemy once you get caught. This is mostly affected when it comes to getting trick stabs. So instead, when you're caught, your best option is to run away, and therefore we're going to need a map with lots of options for us to escape. Now you might not be thinking there is a huge overlap between small maps and maps with lots of escape routes, but when I say small maps, I mostly just mean small areas. Let's go back to Sunshine for example. I think this is one of the better maps for heavy disguises. There are many different places on this map where we could get to stabs and still be close enough to undisguise and run away somewhere. There are lots of obstacles in the way as well, meaning that no one can make a straight line for us. So this section of the video pretty much comes down to either a small map or a map with small areas with lots of escape routes. Now you might be thinking that this is a lot of effort to make a disguise work, and you might be thinking that I'm just heavily overcompensating for the fact that this is not a very good disguise. But I'd like to clear that up and tell you you're wrong on that, because all good disguises take this much effort. Talking about maps and game modes specifically for disguises is a very under-talked about thing when it comes to spy disguises. Not every disguise works equally well on every game mode and every map. And this isn't really something I've seen many people bring up, which I'm going to be honest with you, just smells like a future video of mine. But that's a topic for a later date, as we're only talking about how to make heavy disguises work in this video. But the baseline point is that if you just throw on any disguise and have the exact same strategy for all of them, you will fail. Your strategy for every disguise needs to be different in corresponding with what the disguise is. And for heavy disguises specifically, we're going to need smaller areas to work in with lots of escape routes. And finally, we bring ourselves to the when. When should you be using the heavy disguise? Since we have previously discussed what the heavy disguise is good at, we now need to start reflecting upon when we should be using that. So the heavy disguise is one that you should be using upon the front lines. It is not a disguise you should be using to get behind the enemy and pick off backline targets. And whilst the clip in the background is currently demonstrating me doing just that, these 2 sniper kills would have been a lot more optimal if I had used another disguise. No, the best time to use a heavy disguise is when the enemy is trying to make a push for the objective. See this guy here? His name is the medic, and the entire game revolves around him. This is how TF2 has been designed for the previous 17 years of its life, and that's not going to be changing anytime soon. So therefore, if you're able to control the medic, you're able to control the entire game, and heavy disguises get you in that favourable position quite easily. You should be using your heavy disguise when the enemy is looking to make a push for the objective, or when they are rallying the troops and looking to do so. This is when you should swoop in, use the unforgiving trust of all of the people around you, pick off the medic, and, well, hopefully don't die. Death is a guaranteed thing about playing Spy. Nobody in their right mind will be denying that. But as long as you've taken out the key picks like medics, then you have done your job right. Now, the more keen-eared amongst you might have realised that heavy disguises are most effective in scenarios where heavies would normally be found. And yeah, that's the point of a disguise. When choosing a disguise, you have to act like that class would normally act. That involves playing on the maps where that class is most effective, playing in the same areas where they would normally be, and mimicking their own behaviours based on their unique skill sets to the best of your ability. Spy is all about acting, and that's what makes him so fun, which is why I'd like to do the best I can to teach people about some of the more underrated disguises in Spy's arsenal, and I feel that the heavy disguise is the most underrated one Spy has access to. So go out there, use the knowledge you've learned from this video, and give the heavy disguise a go. I'm sure you won't regret it. And with that being said, you have reached the end of the video. Thank you very much for watching. It's a Lon'qudor Spy video, so I obviously have thank yous to give. The first one goes to Dynamar, once again, for the thumbnail render. You can find his Twitter link down in the description below. And of course, I couldn't have done all the research for this video without the help of Coolstuff. Having access to the knowledge that he has about Spy and the various disguises is an absolutely invaluable tool for videos like these, so his channel is also linked down in the description below. Please go show these 2 people some love, because they're just so cool. And with that being said, one more final thank you from me for watching, and I will see you later down the sunny road.